The following program is being presented to you by a community producer. The statements, views, and opinions expressed are not necessarily those of ALC-TV or the City of Avon Lake.
Welcome to Common Sense. Common Sense program is a series of shows that feature interviews with very interesting people so that we can get to know who they are, what they do, and what makes sense to them and what doesn't in a clear, concise, and direct way. I'm Rudy Breglia, and today I'll be interviewing the experienced, knowledgeable, and wise Casey Zuber, council member, former mayor, and now candidate for mayor. Welcome, Casey, and thank you for your service.
Well, thank you, Rudy, for having me come. I don't think I've ever gotten an introduction like that before for anything.
I could do better.
That's good enough for me. And
okay, well,
next time you'll do it better.
Okay,
how's that sound?
All right. When you run for federal, it's okay.
Yeah.
I won't break that today. To start us off, why don't you give us some of your background, where you were born, where you've lived, that kind of thing.
Well, I actually was born in Findlay, Ohio.
Okay.
My mother had mono when she was pregnant with me.
Okay.
So her mother was a nurse, and they had recently moved to Findlay. Okay. And so she went to stay with her. And so I was actually born in Findlay, and my dad would always talk about the weekends when he would drive, because he still worked here. Okay. And he would drive to Findlay, Ohio, and I guess 1963, the winter of 1963 was cold, miserable, and snowy. So he told me about all those trips he made back and forth to Findlay.
It's far.
Yeah, and well, then you had no highway systems and all those other things, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, what brought you to this part of Ohio? Now you're in Findlay, now you're...
Well, when I was born, my mom came back and my parents lived in Lakewood. I have a sister that's 2 years older than me. They lived in Lakewood until 1968. My mom and dad built a house on Bell Road here in Avon Lake. Okay. So I grew up in that house, and I have basically stayed in Avon Lake with the exception of going to college. Most of my life I've lived here.
Okay, born and bred.
Yep.
Okay.
Pretty much, yeah.
Tell us about the steps of your career.
Well, when I got out of college, I came back, and the reason I came back was because I had a job. So,
okay. Good reason.
Got to work, yes. And I had a job, and that job was being a garbage man for BFI. That was back in the mid-'80s. So that was when garbage men were real garbage men. They would hang on the back of the truck, and they would throw garbage.
Tough job?
It was a tough job. I enjoyed the job. It was very interesting. So when you talk about the garbage contract for the city of Avon Lake, I know more about garbage than anybody, with the exception of the people that are putting together the contract or putting together the bid on the contract.
Okay, all right.
So, and then in 1989, I started working in Lorain County Juvenile Court. Okay. I was a probation officer and ran a couple juvenile court programs.
Another tough job.
Yeah, there's nothing that phases me. Okay. Nothing that phases me on that job. And I had, then I was director of drug and alcohol services for the court. I had a couple other jobs that I worked besides juvenile court. And then in '94, I moved to the Department of Job and Family Services, where I became an investigator. Okay. So and after that, that's when I left that job to become the mayor. Oh, okay. Yeah. I did 13 years as an investigator there. Wow. Yeah. So it was that was an interesting job too. So a lot of my background is involved in court, the court system, domestic relations court, juvenile court, child support enforcement. So I've testified a lot in court, dealt with a lot of different court things. And then I did work a little while for the Ohio Turnpike Commission also.
Okay. Did you have a role model that kind of pushed you forward?
I had several of them. Most importantly probably is Judge Joe Zuber. He was from Lorain, and he, when he was campaigning for judge, I worked for him. I've worked on a lot of different campaigns. I've worked on many campaigns since 1982. But that was the first real county campaign I worked on. And then I got a job working with him in juvenile court. But he really taught me a lot about campaigning and people and gave me a lot of things. And like when I became mayor, he swore me in. Another person would be Joan Lachon. She was a director of the Board of Elections. Spent a lot of time with her. In fact, there was time where she would stay after, and we would order pizza and just talk about different political things and stuff like that. And I was only, you know, in my 20s. And Bob Wilson, who was the chairman of the Republican Party in Elyria, he was another mentor of mine. I spent a lot of time talking to him. He sold insurance, and so I would sit and talk to him and get feedback from him. He was also a councilman in Elyria for a long time. And then finally there was Jeff Manning. I did a lot of work for him until he passed away in 2004. And Jeff was a great guy. That was so stunning. I mean, he died at age 54. We were looking forward to doing a lot of work. Yeah. But I would say, when you asked that question, I was like, okay, there wasn't just one.
Okay.
And of course, my mom and dad, of course, were role models for me too.
Right.
You know.
Right.
But those politically were probably.
Well, it sounds like you had some pretty good role models and helped you getting your current position as, or your former position as mayor, and then as councilman.
It gives me a well-rounded background, I guess you could say, in working in the government.
Why did you decide to run for mayor?
Well, I've run for political office many times. I viewed this as more of the question is more of why did you decide to run for office? A lot of that has to do with just a progression. I worked on a lot of campaigns. Running for office is part of that. I think the reason I ran for mayor this time in particular is because I have so much knowledge and background, not only with the city of Avon Lake, but so many connections now within the county and different people. I mean, I've worked with so many different people throughout the years, like the county clerk of courts. I worked with him in juvenile court. The director of the Port Authority, I worked with him when I was mayor before to put the cell tower behind City Hall. So I have a lot of knowledge and I know a lot of people and have a lot of relationships that I think can help the city in a lot of that in regards to the power plant itself and the redevelopment of that.
So having all that experience is really helpful. You know, you can connect all the dots.
Right, and understand that if there's an issue that comes up, there's always someone I can go and talk to. It's like one of my professors always said, it's not that you know the answer, but you know where to go to get the answer.
Yeah. What surprised you about being mayor?
When I was mayor before, the most surprising thing that I found was the amount of people that were willing to help Avon Lake.
Okay.
The people that would step forward, and these were just ordinary Avon Lakers that would either volunteer their time or they would, because they were an Avon Lake company, they would always be the low bidder, always doing things a little bit cheaper because they wanted to make sure it was done correctly. Okay. So you have that amazed me about the town, period. The amount of people that are willing to come forward and do work in the town because they love the town.
Yeah, Avon Lake is well thought of.
Right, and that's a lot of what I get feedback on now, talking to people, because I'm talking to thousands of people all the time. And so that's the most important thing that I hear now is how people just love the town and think it's a great town. Yeah.
I agree. What are some examples of improvements that you made while you were mayor?
Probably the most important thing I did was get the new aquatic center built.
Okay.
When I became mayor, we had talked about it on city council a little bit, and I'm the one that basically put the team together to make sure that we were going to build it where it is today, and to move forward on a ballot initiative to pay for it.
Okay.
Because when they built the original pool in Avon Lake in 1962, they passed a property tax levy to pay for that pool. So in 2008, we had a property tax levy on the ballot, 0.4 mils, to build the pool. And so I worked hard to pass that. So teams of people that I had, not only from the city, but also people that I had worked with in other campaigns, we worked hard to pass that, and that passed 60-40. So I would say that is probably the most important thing that I did when I was mayor. There was a couple other things that I did. One other thing that I did was the Oak Park at the end of Beck Road. Noel Ilg and I were friends, and he had talked to me after I became mayor, and the fact that he wanted to be able to sell his land, turn it into a park. And that's at the end of Beck Road, Woodfield, and some other streets butt up against it. It's like a neighborhood park, but I worked with him a lot on that. But different things. I think that what I tried to do more so was to try and bring a little bit more management in, as far as, having more team meetings and putting teams together, and that's the approach I would take when I get back into office.
Yeah, that's how you get things done, right?
Right.
And that aquatic center is absolutely beautiful.
It is. It's one of those things that people talk about a lot, and I
use a lot.
Yeah, and it's a great thing for the town.
Yeah.
The other thing I did was to Save the Woods, of course, to build the Metro Park too, but that was before I became mayor, and that's when I was on council.
Okay. How long were you mayor?
4 years, 2008, January 1st of 2008 to December 31st of 2011.
Okay. What plans do you have when you're mayor for the old power plant?
I've been working on this since we were told that they were going to be tearing it down. So one of the first people I went to go and see was the former director of the Metro Park, Dan Martin, who I worked a lot with the Save the Woods and the Cough reservations. I work with him. He's very well respected, and to get some ideas, because he's an idea person. He built a lot of the Lorain County Metro Park himself during his tenure. I think he was 30 or 40 years the director of the Metro Park. Just to get feedback from him, that's where I started, and got some good ideas from him. And the Metro Park is involved now. Like, we had a meeting this morning on it, as we do monthly meetings, and I try and update people on that on my social media and things like that. And the Metro Park was there, the current director, and they've applied for different grants and things like that to try and purchase areas, and like, there's some grant money available for reclamation of Powdermaker Creek and those different things that they're looking at. But what I would like to see is the Metro Park, there's, in every plan that's been put forward, the lakefront is green space access.
Right.
And I think that you've seen some of those plans.
Yeah.
And I would say that some vision, either the Metro Park or working with the County Port Authority, because the County Port Authority has a lot of leeway in purchasing land and what they can do with it and different things like that. So I would try and work in conjunction with those two entities within the county on the green space purchase area, which is, now they're talking 17 acres, give or take some. But if it turns out that the Metro Park would own that or lease it, or however that combination would be, I would like to have them also take our Miller Road Park, so that they would have, a huge park on the lakefront, Avon Lake.
Extend, right?
Yeah, because the issue that you have with the city when it comes to recreational aspects, they're lower on the totem pole. The first thing, the thing I think is most important for any local government is safety, police and fire. So those are always our first priority. Then there's other things, watching the money and things like that. But while recreation is important, but it's not the #1 priority. And
right.
From my standpoint, that's all they do, the county Metro Parks.
Right.
They have the whole
They're not worried about these other things.
Right, right. And they run parks, and that's what they do. And they always, when they get involved, it's a joint with the city or some other entity. So, and that's what I would like to see done myself, because that way they can have the whole park, and they have a lot more resources. And they're, like I said, they've applied for several different grants already for the project. So I would look at working with them quite quickly. And I think that the other thing they're talking about is condominiums, restaurants, eateries, a boat dockage, marina. The marina is hopefully going to eventually happen. That's going to take a lot more time. There's a lot of state problems with that. The state's going to fight you on that, but I think that that would be something that we would look at trying to do. Yeah. Based on whoever's going to purchase the property. The issue that you have is that it's privately owned. So when they're basically scrapping it and they're trying to sell it, all those plans that you've seen, drawings and sketches and different things, are all possibilities. But I think that the big thing is going to be the green space, some type of restaurant. There's going to be a condominiums or apartments, something like that. There's going to have to be. There's some people that don't like that. I mean, I'm not really too keen on that, but it's got to be done. And I think that's part of the trade-off for getting the public access green space, too, from our standpoint, from the city standpoint. And I think the biggest thing is economic factors now are not real good to be able to do a big project like that for, you know, tens of millions of dollars. But the other thing, too, is finding somebody that is going to do the investment. And I think that from the standpoint of the city, we have to have all these different things in place so that when some buyer does come to buy it, and I don't know if that's going to happen until even after it's torn down, based on the environmental conditions there that they're doing. But I think that upon that you're probably get a buyer, but I think they have all the different entities together, so when they come in and we're all sitting in the room together, we're saying, okay, yeah, we can do the green space, we're going to put this together with the Metro Parks and the Port Authority, and then we would have other agreements with those entities, the city would, and then we negotiate on the different housing aspects of it and things like that, on what's going to go in that area. Okay. So I think I have a vision, but I think that's a lot of that has to do with who's going to purchase it, number one, and what they're looking to do with it. A green space will always and has always been part of it, and because we control the zoning on it, we control a lot of what's going to go in there. And I think that we're going to be willing to work with people. We have a great team of people in the Community Improvement Corporation, not only political people, but community people that are involved in finance and that are involved in real estate that know these things. We have the best brownfield lawyer in Todd Davis involved in this. In fact, I was out doing door-to-door work over the Westwinds, and I was talking to an environmental lawyer, and he said, you got the guy that wrote the book on this. Okay. So, I mean, these things cost money, but this is a century opportunity, a once in 100-year opportunity. So we need to put the best people together to do it, and he's one of the best. He is very good and knows his stuff, and I'm impressed with him. And that recommendation came from some members of the CIC that aren't the political people. They're the outside people that, the finance and people and stuff like that, the volunteers, going back to what we talked about before when I was mayor, the amount of people that just come forward and work with the city because they love the town and they want to do good things for it.
Understand. Now, what about other land in Avon Lake? Where do you see the city going for either investment or recreational use?
There's a couple things I'm looking at. Like, I talk a lot about area between Cove Avenue and Westwind Drive, and I think I've talked to you a little bit about this. There's a green space area there that I'd like to see to purchase for park or green space, because it's very similar to what is in the Metro Park now, that similar platted land, on a much smaller scale, of course. But I'd like to do that. There's some areas varying areas around the town similar to that. Over by Troy School, there's a lot of those areas.
Yep.
Some areas around the churches and things like that
Yeah.
too. But I think as far as other things, and this goes a little bit with the next question on economic development to a certain extent, but I think that recreational aspects, I think that a lot of that comes down to money, you know, from our standpoint in purchasing things for recreation. There's been several different discussions on some different areas to do that, but those haven't worked to fruition. Like there's some wooded area around Blesser Park that I would look at trying to purchase for the city to make that park even bigger. Other things like that. And I think that a lot of that is being open to people as they come to you, you know, and that's one of the things, like, I guess the example is like the big trucks. When the early childhood PTA president came to me about the idea, and we had already started an open house, and then we just added the big trucks event onto that, and that thing is huge. Well, you were at the one this year. I mean, that thing is massive.
Enormous.
Right, and it's a great thing for the town.
Oh,
but
you
that's
bet.
only because somebody had an idea and came to talk to me about it when I was mayor, and we executed it. But I think that that's being open to those kind of ideas, I think, is something. You know, I was talking to the guy the other day, probably 3 or 4 weeks ago, about the BMX track.
Okay.
He came here several months ago and talked about it. So I talked to him a little bit more about that and how we could do that and work together with some people. So I think that being open to things like that and different people ideas, because public access studio, I mean, I was on council 2 years, and the members of the Cable Advisory Commission came to me and said, we have this idea of the access studio, it's in our contract, and when we went through all the process, it was actually 2 public access studios they were supposed to give us. So we had some legal recourse against them, and we got the money to be able to put this in our library, but that's...
And thank you very much.
You know, well, no, it's a good thing for the community.
You bet.
But it wasn't, it was only because these 2 people were on the cable commission, and they came to me, and we worked. We got a lawyer out of Washington, I think it's Alliance for Community Media. We hired him, and he came in, and we got the money to be able to set up this area. And the library was expanding at that time, so they're like, you can have the whole basement. So, I mean, but it's just listening to people and going on things like that you're like, well, we can do this, and putting a team together to make it happen.
Yeah, all these ideas are out there. And,
right. There's a lot of ideas out there, and
if you're open to them.
Right, exactly, and you can put together a team to do it.
Okay. Change gears a little bit, what benefit would Avon Lakers get from changes in Lorain County's government that will happen if issue 20, the 7-district appointive executive plan, passes?
I am a proponent of that. I worked at the county for 18 years.
Okay.
I think that you basically, and this is something Dan Martin told me about, you basically have 3 Lorain counties. You have the eastern side, which is the suburban Avon Lake, Avon, North Ridgeville, more of the townships now there too. Sheffield Village is becoming much more that way. Then you have the rural areas, and then you have the cities. So I think the 7 districts would
balance that?
Would balance that, number one, but number 2, you'd get input from all these different areas.
Right.
So that, and a lot of the problem that the county ran into up until probably about 4 or 5 years ago was the fact that the 2 big cities basically ran the county. It was run out of those 2 cities, and that's where most of the elected officials for the county came from. And it's just recently changed, and I think that this would be an augment to that to make it happen for good things for the county, because I think that the more input you get from different people in different areas of the county, the better off you're going to be, rather than just in certain areas. I mean,
balance.
Right, right. Balance between the townships and the cities and the more suburban type of areas. I mean, it's gotten a little bit better now, but I think it could be a lot better, because I really don't think the townships have a lot of say in it. You know, we're becoming like, I think it's been better for us with the way the county commission is now. It's like when I've talked to Rob Monroe, he said it's so much better for him to deal with the county now than it was, 5 or 8 years ago, just simply because they're much more open to listening to him.
Okay. How will you make Avon Lake more business friendly to attract new businesses and to keep the ones we have?
Well, I've talked a lot about this during the campaign, is bringing back the Mayor's Economic Advisory Board.
Okay.
This was a board that Mayor Berner started and that I inherited when I became mayor, and it was 5 business people from the town that would meet on a monthly basis and talk about different business incentives, investments, different things that the city could do to foster business. One of the things that we did start were the small business seminars that were here at the library. We started that. Joe Archecki was the chairman of the commission, and he started that, and they are now handled by Lorain Community College. Out of Community College, I try and start those up again here so that we could have our businesses, and we would have a different topic. Like one meeting would be Facebook, another meeting would be, we'd bring in someone on money management and balance sheets, all those different things, so our small businesses could get help. We also had, in several different areas of town, we would set up a luncheon or a after-work party or something like that. Like we had one at Pinnock Parkway, where we invited all the Pinnock Parkway together.
Businesses.
Yeah. I do more of that, the networking thing. The networking thing is key for business because it's some of these different things you can find people that have different ideas that can mesh with yours on how you can use them.
Right,
and,
right.
And I think that we need to do more to recognize our business. One of the big things that I plan to do is next year is the 50th anniversary of Ford Motor Company in Avon Lake.
Okay.
So I want to have a huge Ford 50th anniversary party for the city and be able to put things forward on that and celebrate Ford. And anytime that we buy a Ford car or truck, I always bring up the fact that Ford has given the city of Avon Lake, through their company, hundreds of millions of dollars over the years.
Okay.
I mean, hundreds of millions of dollars, and we need to thank them for that. And I think a little bit more of that, sitting down, working with them. There are some internal issues with the city that I would also look at to try and make it a little bit more business friendly, that I've talked to other business people about. But I think recognition of our business, because your best salespeople to bring more business in are your current businesses.
You bet.
Yeah, and if you're treating them well and you're fostering their growth and working with them and trying to have a partnership, then that's what you really need to do. And I've reached out to several different businesses, like I walked like the Learwood Square back in the spring, talked to all the businesses there, and I would do that on a regular basis too. Because when I was mayor, we had no economic development director. It was the mayor.
Yep.
So that's a lot of what I did in my capacity then too.
You have a lot of experience in that.
Yeah, right.
How can Avon Lakers support your efforts? Do you need volunteers?
Well, of course we need volunteers. Rudy, you understand that.
Yeah.
Anybody can contact me. I have a website.
Why don't you give the address?
Zuberformayor.com.
Okay.
My email address is kczuber@yahoo. And I'm on Facebook, Carl C. Zuber, Friends of Zuber. I'm also on LinkedIn, Carl K.C. Zuber. So I can be contacted in any of those ways. My phone number is 440-309-5940. People want to contact me that way too. I talk to anybody anytime about anything. So
okay.
I always told people that.
Well, how about if I call you really early in the morning? That's okay.
That's okay.
Your phone number and your email will be at the bottom of the screen, so people can use that to contact you. Good.
But yeah, so I try and push out more and more different things on my social media. Like, on Wednesday I put out a notice about the CIC meeting on the power plant.
Okay.
Today I wrote something up about this is what we learned at that meeting. about different things that happen. So I'm always trying to get stuff out to people. Like I said, I'm willing to talk to anybody at any time about anything.
Okay. So. CIC means?
Community Improvement Corporation. That's the group that City Council basically engaged with to be the liaison with CHARA, Avon Lake Redevelopment Group, the power plant, people that bought the power plant. And the reason we did that was because you got a councilman and the mayor sits on that board, but you have a lot of individual citizens on that board. And so we're trying to work through everything through that particular entity so that anything funnels through that, so we have one point of contact. And they've been coming in on a monthly basis, presenting to anybody that wants to be in the public to listen. I mean, last month it was an evening meeting, so we had a few more people. We'll have another evening meeting on December 7th. The next meeting is November 17th, and that'll be at City Hall Council Chambers at 9 a.m. So, but that's the entity that, and it's really good because you have, like I said before, we have a good group of people, but you have not just the politicians looking at it, you have the people in the community that know real estate, that know finance, business people, and that's how we got our attorney, who like I said, I have not heard anything but good things about Todd Davis, and he's been very good and gives us a lot of good ideas, and I think that he's worth almost every penny that we pay him. It's a big amount, but it's good for the community, and I think that we all realize one of the biggest things that I hear out when I'm talking to people is that don't screw up this thing with the power plant. That's one of the biggest things, and I think
it's the future of Avon Lake.
Right, exactly, and there's so many different things that can move on that.
Okay. Well, the people of Avon Lake should be grateful that a man of your caliber, your wisdom and experience is now running for mayor. And
well, I appreciate that.
And I wish you luck in your endeavors. In summary, what makes sense to you and what doesn't?
Well, I thought about this question a lot, Rudy, because we've talked a little bit about this, and this is to me, this is about running for mayor and being campaign.
Okay.
And so I guess what doesn't make sense to me is voting for a candidate that's been on council for only a few years, and the only other government experience he has is in a suburban police department. As compared to someone like me, what does make sense, I have over 20 years as an elected official, mayor for 4 years, so I've done the job. I have a much more experience within different areas of the government, such as the county and juvenile court, and the Department of Job and Family Services, different systems within the government and things like that. So I guess for me it makes a little bit more sense when somebody looks at the two people that are running for mayor, when they look and they see that I have the experience because I did do the job for 4 years. So.
And experience counts.
Yes. Yes, it does, especially with the issues coming with the power plant and the other things in our community.
Okay.
All right.
Well, thank you for appearing on the Common Sense Show, and thank you for watching. Please send us your comments and questions. If you know someone who is interesting, please send their contact information, and we'll take it from there. And remember, seatbelts save lives.
The preceding program was presented to you by a community producer. The statements, views, and opinions expressed were not necessarily those of ALC TV or the City of Avon Lake.